social media, people only show you what they want to be shown. So somebody might show a happy relationship or a happy marriage, but in reality, it may not be as happy as it seems. But here you are comparing yourself, saying, "Oh, I wish I was like them." Ooh, you better wish carefully.
Yeah.
I don't miss out. The way you shake it is your back. It do be done. Now you just got my baby. I don't miss the move. I don't feel shake it. Ding, ding, ding. Oh baby, so free. Make you know give me better.
Now, let's highlight social media and the detrimental effects it can have on mental health. And people ask, well, what aspect of social media? We can talk about endless scrolling, because there will be people scrolling for hours and hours and hours on TikTok, on Instagram, if they use Facebook, on Facebook and Twitter. You know, and when your mind is absorbing all of that information, what's going on during that time frame? People are comparing their life to what they see on social media. The overload, the constant overload of information. They're basically programming their minds to compare to the next person's lives. The next person's life. They're consuming this constant negative overload of information. Every single day we open up our phones, there's always some type of negative event that has occurred, whether it's a shooting, whether it's, you know, some political issue in the world, a global issue, war, you know, or, you know, drama, reality TV drama that's been posted to Instagram or whatnot. Materialism, external validation, feeling left out, thinking that you have to look a certain way or you have to own certain things to be valuable, you know, to be validated. All of this crowds the minds. That's why I think in the past episode, Jane, you mentioned how Instagram provides the option to hide likes and you could turn off comments now and so on. And but before I get into what I'm aiming at, what do you have to say about social media's linkage to anxiety issues?
Oh, you hit it right on the nail. Yes. Social media has, I don't want to use the word brainwash, but have programmed us that if we don't look like this, you're not going to get this. If you are not at a certain point in your life, because you're looking at how your friends living their lives, all their accomplishment, if you not have reached it at this certain age, you're a failure. If you don't look like this, you're not going to get that. So yeah, social media has done damage to a lot of people. It was one point I had to like take a break from that because, like, let's be real. I think at a certain point people do compare you compare yourself to other people.
Of course.
Especially like someone who like I said, I'm Nigerian. Like your parents tell you constantly, like, at this age I was this and that and the third. Look at your mates, they this and that and the third. Yeah. Why are you not this, that, and the third? You'd be like, at the end of the day, you're like, I'm trying, I'm doing my best. Why you can't just be happy with the accomplishments I have made so far? But then you can't help while you go on social media, you see all your friends graduating. They got their masters, because if you didn't get your masters, you ain't nobody. If you don't got a PhD, you always got to up one somebody just to make someone else happy. But you're not doing it for yourself, but you're doing it for other people. You want to do it for the validation of others. But at the end of the day, you got to take care of yourself. It's important that you, like I said, set boundaries, set timers. Don't be on your phone so much. Go outside, touch grass. Go see the sun sometimes. Like, I think it's important. Go visit your friends. Call up a friend. Get off of social media when you can. And don't get me wrong, I like to dabble here and there on social media, on Twitter, talk trash of like the latest sports events or music. Yeah, I like that. But I think it's sometimes we got to disconnect from social media and just go into the real world.
And I think that's a huge problem with our generation, is because, Jane, when you go outside, right? When you go places, when you go to the mall, if you go to a restaurant and you see a group of people, you know, in a setting, whether they're eating or whatnot, a lot of times, if not all of them, most of them are on their phone scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've attached social media to our brains. And if you don't stipulate boundaries on how much social media you're intaking, that can cause information overload. And then it makes sense why people have anxiety, because now you're worrying about things that if you weren't so caught up into when it comes to social media, wouldn't be an issue. And I'm preaching to the choir here because like you said, we all get caught up in the comparison tactic. And for me, I was catching myself comparing myself to people who were my friends on social media, whether I knew them in person or didn't. I was seeing, oh, this person, just graduated, with their master's degree, and I haven't finished my master's degree as of yet. Or this person's gotten married, or this person travels here, or this person is buying this home or whatnot, and we see that and it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing the same thing, even though our individual journeys are different in life.
And also, you don't even know how they got that.
Right. And you don't even know how they got that because, again, social media, people only show you what they want to be shown. We social media, a lot of times, people only show glimpses of what goes on in their life. So somebody might show a happy relationship or a happy marriage, but in reality, it may not be as happy as it seems. But here you are comparing yourself, saying, oh, I wish I was like them. Ooh, you better wish carefully.
Yeah.
Or,
right.
oh, this person owns this car or is traveling to this festival or going across the world, whatever. You don't know how they finance that. Not saying that everybody fakes it, whatever. No, but it's never good to desire what someone else has. And that's the problem with social media. And I think I'm making a correlation now. When we were isolated during quarantine, what did people use to stay connected with each other in some type of way?
Social media.
Social media. Because you couldn't go to that person's house or you couldn't fly like how we wanted to. And I think because I noticed even my social media usage increased in 2020. Because prior to 2020, I was on social media, but it wasn't really something that I think I barely posted, I barely scrolled and whatnot. But beginning in 2020, I started getting into that habit of trying to, keep up with what everybody was seeing on social media. And so this is a huge part of what we're seeing with anxiety and insomnia. Because I mentioned we want to spotlight insomnia. Now, for those of you who don't know what insomnia is, because again, some people may not know, this is a common sleep disorder, which makes it difficult for people to fall asleep or stay asleep or get good quality sleep. And between 50 to 70 million Americans have a sleep disorder of some kind. And across the world, 10% have long-term insomnia and 30% of people have short-term insomnia. That's a lot. 10% of the world has long-term insomnia. Let that sink in. 10 might seem like a low number, but that's millions of people who are suffering from this. And again, we can link it to if you're constantly overloading your mind, how can you possibly shut off your brain at night to go to sleep and rest?
Right.
And when you don't sleep, that causes a myriad of other issues that not only affect the mental, but also the physical as well, And so we talked about loneliness. We talked about social media. You brought up a good point, Jane, is we're going to talk about African culture and African households here. Because anybody who, or you know, and not even just African culture in households, but other cultures that are similar to African culture, where we hold children to
These
a very high
expectations.
standard.
Yeah.
An expectation. You know, the whole saying, oh, you either better be a lawyer or a
Or a
doctor.
doctor. Mm-hmm.
And if you're anything else, that's not good. And if you deviate from this, you're not seen as someone who is successful. And I'm not saying this is every single African household, and I'm not saying that this is, you know, every single African, you know, way of thinking, but it is quite common. And I'm the first person to say, yes, we need to encourage more Black people, more Africans into fields that, you know, are STEM, which include being a doctor of some sort and so on. But we shouldn't do it in a way where we are shaming them if they have interests
In other,
otherwise.
yep.
And growing up, you know, it's funny because now history is my thing. I love history. Love it, love it, love it. But I never wanted to be a historian. But it's just something that I like keeping up to date with. And, you know, I used to always hear growing up in an African household was like, oh, historians not going to pay you money. Being a historian's not going to pay you money. I'm like, I'm not even aiming to be an historian. But you see, nowadays, I know historians who make a lot of money by posting, you know, videos on YouTube and educating the population. But a lot of times you know, growing up, people were shamed if they were entering fields, whether it's, you know, art field, liberal arts, whatnot, that were not necessarily STEM or being a lawyer, something of status. That makes sense. I don't know if you want to chime in here.
Yeah, you said it. That is definitely true. Like, my parents were very supportive, but they did want like us to be a doctor or a lawyer. My before I switched to liberal studies, my original major was kinesiology. I just had to have a reality check with myself. Science was beating me up. Anatomy, like if you can't spell it right, you had no business being there. I'm just gonna I'm gonna be 100 with you. You take an anatomy, you can't spell certain body parts. Okay.
Yeah, that's scary.
You're not gonna go that far.
Yeah,
I'm just saying for me.
You're right.
You can't. But I'm just saying for me, I had to have a reality check with myself and also talking to my counselor during that time. It was like, Jane, we know you love science. You want to help people. Like, let's find something that will still give you that thrive of helping and being around other people. So, you know, I switched to liberal studies. I did a little bit nonprofit when I finished graduating. Now I'm in education. So everything worked out for my favor. But I'm saying, like, most African household, you said you were liberal studies, they're looking at you sideways.
They're like, yeah, they're like, oh, well, when I was a kid, I studied this and I had a 99 in science.
Like, that's good for you.
And that's good.
Right.
But you see what it is, Jane? You see what it is a lot of these parents are trying to live through their
kids. Yes.
Because they weren't able to, you know, achieve a certain level in life, which is not a bad thing.
It's not.
But they live their dreams through their children. And again, I'm going to say it again because I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm saying. It's not bad to encourage our kids, especially kids of color, to go into STEM disciplines because, for sure, we need more Black children in those fields, especially Black girls in STEM, in medicine, in engineering. Because especially with the engineering field, that's a mostly male-dominated field with less, you know, we don't have too much representation of people of color. However, we also must strike a balance with not shaming that child in a way that cultivates a mindset that they feel less than because they didn't accomplish what their parents saw them out to accomplish.
Or if they did accomplish, they want you to be better than them. For instance, if your parents got a bachelor's degree, they want you to up on them. You better get your master's. If your parents got a master's, you better first find a way to get a PhD because, like I said, you have to up on your parents. Like, you want to, how should I say this? You want to make your parents proud. You want to do the
Of
best you
course,
can.
most
But
people
to
do.
their eyes, if you're not a doctor or a lawyer or something in the, like you say, STEM field,
Or with status.
yeah, it's like why did we come over here for this? To just for you to be what? A singer, which is nothing wrong with singing. Like singers make a bunch of money if you're good at it. To be honest, you can make a lot of money acting. I mean, what's her name? Or I forgot, she's on Insecure. I'm not, my mind's blanking. She's Nigerian American.
Oh, the one who played her best friend.
Yeah, Issa's best
Yeah.
friend. I don't, for some reason I can't get her name right in my face, but
Mhm.
her, she like did everything, quote unquote, a Nigerian supposed to do. Get the best. She got the best schools. She got the best degrees, but she's not practicing what she went to school for. She's an actress, very successful. I'm sure her parents is showing her off all over the place. Letting her people know that, oh, she's on HBO or she got a stand up, she's doing this and right. You're smiling now, but I'm pretty sure this is just my opinion or my theory. When she first said it, they were probably looking at her sideways. How you gonna make money? Who am I to you? You say you're an actress. They don't make money. You be like, dang. But this is my dream. I'm pretty good at it, so believe in me.
Ooh, Jane, you said a mouthful. We need to start training and cultivating children to be able to use the best of their ability in whatever field they go in. Because somebody may, one thing I will say, like my dad said growing up, was that he always said, "Look, son, yes, I would like for you to go into, STEM or in law. Law was like actually my path that I was going into, and then I deviated and thought, okay, STEM was my way, and so on. I've changed up from time to time, but he says, whatever you do, make sure you're the best at it. And that's the mindset that we need to be ingraining in our children. Is no matter what you do, if you want to be a model, be the best model. Don't just say I'm a model because you look good. Actually put the work into being the best you can be. If you want to be an actor, be the best you can be. If you want to be a business owner, let's cultivate, ways in which we can enrich that in our children instead of trying to stipulate, oh, if you don't go in this field, then you're not worth much. Now, I don't want to go too on that because we have some other things to tackle. While we're on the topic of African culture and households, let's talk about Black families and the stigma of mental health in the Black culture. Now, this is just the diaspora at large. We're talking about Black Americans in America, Africans. There is a similar thread where mental health hasn't always been prioritized or seen as something of great importance. When Black people, we vocalize about anxiety, depression, other mental illnesses, a lot of times we say, oh, that's Satan, that's the devil.
That's the devil.
You just need to pray about it. Don't talk about it. God will take it away, and help you out. And especially for males, Black males.
You always have to be strong.
Right. You always have to be strong. Don't show any signs of weakness, even though it's not weak to talk about your feelings and your thoughts and your ideas. And if you're feeling that your mental is out of balance. I'm glad that now we're starting to have the conversation in our community of spreading awareness about mental health and resources. But there's a lot of trauma that goes on in our families, generational trauma.
When you said that, yes, if you express how you're feeling to your loved ones, they'll say, give it up to the Lord, talk to him. But I feel like it's more than that. Don't get me wrong, I'm a very spiritual person. I'll talk to the man above, but I think sometimes we need something tangible. It's good to talk to someone face to face, someone who could give you tools to deal with wherever you're dealing with. And sometimes it does bum you out that you can't talk to your loved ones or your parents about this, because in their defense, they only know what they know, especially coming from where they come from. It's not really, it's not something that's is highlighted as an issue out there. So to them, it's like it's not a big deal, because for them, they said, if you're depressed here in the United States, just imagine going back home. So why are you depressed? You have everything you you have everything you need here. Why are you depressed?
And I think a lot of people think like that. They think, well, for immigrant families, they'll say, oh, well, you're talking about depression and hardship, you should go back to whatever country or whatever continent they're from. Let's say Africa. Oh, go back to Africa and see what they have to deal with there. And that's true. Yeah, people have to deal with hardships, but we also have to remember that, again, we live in this society, and everybody has a right to express when something in their life, in their location, is affecting their mental health. We need to stop that comparison of, oh, well, these people have it worse. And yes, it's a good reminder in ourselves to know that somebody else is going through something a little bit more difficult, and so we should be grateful for the good that we have.
Yeah, but that should not diminish how you're feeling.
Exactly. It should never diminish or negate how we're feeling inside just because, oh, somebody has it worse. And when it comes to Black families, because I've heard this question before, why is mental health such a big issue in our community, yet, we're not seeing the progress that needs to be made? And we have to realize that, especially in the case of Black Americans, James, there's been so much trauma that has been placed on many Black families in this country. And I know other groups have experienced it too, but I'm just using Black Americans as an example because we talk about colorism. What does that do to the psyche? Unresolved family issues. Having a uncle, who you have
creepy.
A creepy uncle that still is being kept around in the family because, oh, that's your family. Even though that the very presence of that particular individual might cause some type of inner reaction to the person who they have hurt. But you know what it is? The hush-hush mentality. The way how Black people discipline their children.
Right. I was like, why would you hit a child because they dropped a cup of water, and they're still developing as kids and how to control their balance? Like, why are you hitting them? Right. It makes no sense.
Oh, Jane, I'm so glad.
Why are you whipping your child because they got bad grades?
I'm so glad you brought that up because I've seen parents, especially Black parents, whip their kids for very minuscule things. And where that stems from is how we were whipped for minuscule things in slavery. If you looked at master a certain way, what did master do?
Hit you.
If you didn't pick as much cotton or as much tobacco as you should have that day, you got whooped. If you were a house slave and you didn't perform whatever duties you had to do inside, you were whooped. Because people have this ideology that, oh, the house slaves didn't have to go through abuse. A lot of times they went through a more frequent abuse because they were in closer contact with the master of the plantation. So I say that to say that we've taken the abuse that has been placed on us, and now we've perpetuated that within our own families, within our culture. And we have to have this discussion of, it's not cool.
It's
not healthy. It doesn't help us in any kind of way behaving that kind of, oh yeah, when I was a child, I was whooped if I did this to me. Yes, I'm a strong believer in discipline. Don't get me wrong.
But there's ways to do it.
But there's ways to do it that don't verge on the level of abuse. Because what happens is these kids grow up
They're gonna resent you.
They resent you. They have anxiety issues. They're depressed. They're fearful
Mm-hmm.
of certain things. And if they don't know any better, they regurgitate what their parents did to
The
them.
cycle continues because in their head, they was like, I
Mhm.
turned out fine. But in
Mhm.
reality, you're not fine. You're not.
You're not. And even besides just the issues that we perpetuate in our culture, we also have to talk about how the crack epidemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I'll be honest. For me, my mom was a victim of the crack epidemic, and that tore apart, you know, our family. You know, I was placed in foster care. A lot of people don't know this. You know, my older brother was heavily affected by it as well. And so a lot of Black families can relate to that because the crack epidemic tore apart a lot of Black families in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s because our parents were arrested, taken away. We either had to be raised by our grandparents or by foster parents. And if you were in a foster home, you weren't always placed in the best of foster homes.
Mm-hmm.
I thank God that I was placed with a wonderful lady for 3 years until my father got me out. And so you can only imagine what kind of mental issues that I had to work through as a kid coming out of foster care, having a mom who had addiction issues and so on. And there are so many other Black kids, or just kids in general, who have that kind of story, but particularly within our culture, because we have the hush hush mentality, oh, just pray about it and Jesus would take care of everything. A lot of people hide it inside. Yes, prayer works.
Mm-hmm.
Prayer really does work, but also professional help is extremely important in our communities because, again, while there are folks who resolve their issues and actually seek help, there are many more who don't, who live with this on a day-to-day basis, who live with mental illness, and that can transform into them being, you know, sick individuals, them being lonely, sometimes them committing crimes based upon their own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really need to raise the flag of having the conversation, and not just the conversation, but actual tangible solutions, right? About mental health stigma
Mm-hmm.
in the Black culture.
And it's okay to seek out help. You know, when most people think about therapy, they think it's a white people thing. Oh, it's only white people see therapy. No, you can see it too. We all need help. It's not just a white issue.
And you know, I'm so glad you said that because growing up, that's what I heard.
That's
Not
white
from
people.
my family, but I would hear it within the Black
Mhm.
community. Like, that's a white people thing to go to see a therapist or see a shrink or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a white people thing to do. And it's not a white people thing to do. Yes, they probably have
They
ease
got
of
funds.
access.
Yeah.
Because as we know, it's not easy accessing mental health resources, but it is not a white people thing or a weak thing or a bougie thing to ask for help. When you ask for help, that's the true strength of an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I
you
agree.
recognize that something is off with me, something is off with my mental, I need help, and I can't do it alone. And since we're talking about a lack of mental health resources and professionals and specialists, more than 150 million Americans, Jane, live in federally designated mental health professional shortage areas. Let me say that again. 150 million people live in federally designated mental health professional shortage areas. This is according to the Association of Medical Colleges. And what they're seeing is that within a few years, the country will probably be short between 15,000 and 30,000 psychiatrists, which places more burden on social workers and psychologists having to take up the lack of individuals who are supposed to be engaging in this work to help the American population. And if mental health is an issue in this country, the greatest country in the world, you can only imagine in other places what kind of mental health resources they have.
And it doesn't help when they cut fundings for these programs.
Or just not place enough funding.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, well, for one, we're a reactionary culture, meaning even within our medical system, right? We wait for people to get sick and then we treat them. Instead of, okay, that's fine, but what about finding ways to prevent that person? I know you can't always totally prevent, but you can aim to prevent that person from getting sick. And this is the same ideology we have to have. Well, I think that we should have for mental health is we need to not only wait for people to have severe mental issues before, we deem them help, even though a lot of times people don't even help them even when the issues are severe. But we need to find ways to rehabilitate our society because so many people deal with these issues, and a lot of times they deal with it alone. And then what happens? The person kills themselves, or they hurt themselves, or they hurt others, as we're seeing in our society with gun violence. A lot of times, if you look at these individuals who are either conducting mass shootings or school shootings or whatnot, a lot of times it's unresolved mental health issues. And I'm not saying this is the only cause, but it is a notable, a significant cause that we cannot ignore. We have a lack of mental health professionals across this country. And what makes it even worse is we have a lack of mental health professionals who look like you and me, Jane.
Yeah. It's important to have someone who looks like you because they understand the Black experience. I'm not saying that is what I'm saying. Because I'm not saying that a white therapist is not good, but it's not going their advice might not transfer over to the Black person experience.
Exactly. You hit it on the nail. We need more Black therapists, Black psychologists and psychiatrists, because they're able to understand experience that we go through in our society that no other people or other people may have a hard time understanding. Like when we talk about crack epidemic, that's something that only somebody who has experience with somebody who was involved in the crack epidemic or knows the ins and outs of the effects on children to be able to help somebody who, has experience with that in their family. And so this is the worst time to have a shortage of mental health professionals because look at we're post-pandemic. Changes in our society have occurred at, ridiculous rates. Look at how the globe has changed in less than 2 years alone. And what does that do to people asking for help and not being able to, coming out of isolation? This is the worst time for a shortage of mental health professionals, y'all. And so I'm glad that we're having this discussion. I'm glad that now we're starting to see even though it shouldn't have taken as long, but we're starting to see the very important need for mental health resources and stability.
I will add that I'm happy that I see more people who look like me and you are speaking up about it and talking to their friends or even actually talking to their family members of what they're dealing with. And I'm feeling ashamed. So this is a new generation. Yeah. We are not holding it in.
Jane, you hit it on the nail. Because 10 years ago, you didn't see the amount of Black and brown people, but specifically Black men in particular, being vocal and open and vulnerable about mental health issues that they've had to deal with or are currently dealing with or how they've been able to overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
And not even just Black men and, Black and brown people, but people in other communities as well, that have similar, cultural norms as our culture. Now you're starting to see them speaking out, regardless of if it might be, stepping away from their own cultures or calling out norms that occur in their cultures.
Mm-hmm.
But they're doing it in a way because they know that in order for us to create a healthier generation that comes after us, we must be vocal about this, because without the mind, you don't have anything else.
I agree.
Oh, baby,